Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I apologize for not being able to speak in Tamil. I wish I could. But yes, firstly, thank you, Mr. Arun, for inviting me here today. The launch of the Digital Archive of Singapore Tamil Theatre to briefly share my initial responses to what is, without doubt, a very encouraging development, not only to Tamil theatre but also to Singapore theatre. And of course, a warm congratulations to Ganesh and everyone else who have involved in this great work. When Mr. Arun called me about slightly over a month ago to ask if I can speak here today, I was very much excited, and honestly, not without envy from the position of a Malay theatre practitioner. I am inspired with the potential, the implications, and the effects that such a repository will have to the theatre landscape in Singapore and to the imagination of art and theatre practitioners who are committed to inter and cross-cultural conversations. I had always thought that the Malay community would have a repository dedicated to Malay theatre much earlier, actually, but it definitely seems that Tamil theatre has been able to attain the correct political will, leadership and vision and bid Malay theatre to it. So congratulations. One thing that I'm very sure that is sure of is that such a repository will reveal and increase the wealth of our collective and shared narratives and literacy on the diversity and range of theatre making in Singapore. When yesterday we had to rely on English subtitles to enter the world of Singapore theatre, this repository, I believe, will increasingly make us less of a stranger to one another, and over time more familiar to and conscious of the cultural nuances and sensitivities, be they on faith, ethnicity, tradition, national hopes and aspirations, and just as important, national frustrations and dismay. We can only hope to be more empathetic to the struggles of Tamil theatre practitioners to articulate and translate them onto the Singapore theatre stage, which today are still mysterious to many of us, even amongst us theatre practitioners. What this repository will contain and make available every year, I hope from today, to the public will make the borders of intercultural engagement and practice in Singapore even more porous and educate everyone, including the Tamil-speaking community in Singapore, to adore the Tamil word on the Singapore stage. And importantly, the ideas and perspectives that each Tamil word offers to the multicultural landscape. And the Tamil-speaking character will also be more present and visible on our theatre stage. In brief, this repository, I hope, will further contribute to complicating the constantly evolving definitions and parameters of Singapore theatre. And that is good. We are not homogeneous. We need to constantly remind ourselves of this. Our hearing, our sight, our senses cannot be biased, and no one of us should be left invisible or silent. I am somewhat familiar with the Tamil theatre scene, having briefly worked with Ravindra Drama Group the last 5 years, and having had active conversations with Tamil theatre practitioners since my time as the Artistic Director of Theatre Kamantra from 2001, in my attempt to understand and identify real strategies for sustaining minority theatre in Singapore. Immediately after Mr. Arun's phone call, I contacted several peers and young contemporary Tamil theatre practitioners on how they feel about having the DASTT as a new active and living resource for Tamil theatre. Now, what I gathered was a range of cautious optimism as well as measured reservation towards what the repository will mean to the development of Tamil theatre in Singapore. And interestingly, much of these sentiments are shared by and are still being discussed today within various circles in the growing Malay theatre scene. Now, allow me here to briefly talk of two of these concerns with regards to DSTT. Not to pose as challenges nor resistance, but to be alert to and sufficiently address inherent and existing blinkers and blind spots as this repository grows and evolves. I should stress that these concerns are not for Tamil theatre alone to address and engage in isolation, but in active and close partnership with Malay theatre, Mandarin theatre, English theatre, or collectively known as the Singapore theatre, which Tamil theatre is definitely a part of. Now, I don't have and I refrain from offering solutions or answers, for my conversations with my Tamil theatre colleagues are still ongoing. It will definitely benefit all of us if these concerns are openly and transparently discussed. I hope the DSTT will be acknowledged as an inter or cross-cultural collaboration from here on, and not the sole responsibility of the Tamil theatre community. This approach will also then apply to when in the near future maybe a DASMT or even a DASCT. Just imagine the possibilities, but I already hear rumblings as to why must there still be the CMIO segregation in Singapore theatre. But that's a discussion for another day. So, in no order of merit or urgency, the first concern is on the issue of accessibility and the sustainability of such a repository. Is there a crucial audience, and what would be this measure of criticality to ensure that the upkeep of this repository is sustainable? Who does the repository serve? Primarily the Tamil theatre community and students of Tamil theatre in Singapore and globally? The Tamil-speaking public? Does it include the state as well? So you'll be enlightened and updated on how to provide sufficient and sustainable support to the needs and challenges faced by Tamil theatre by understanding the trends and diversity in representation, issues, practices, etc. that exist within Tamil theatre. These are the same questions that we ask in Malay theatre, be it on the need for a similar repository or the whys of still doing theatre in the Malay language. In an increasingly unfamiliar Singapore landscape where we seem to be fighting a losing battle, justifying and rationalizing the need for the Malay language on stage. Where the minority language at times sounds so foreign and irrelevant to even native ears. Is such a repository merely a platform to document and archive products and residues of Tamil theatre? To be a museum, or should it be a living center for active conversations on how the past can evolve into the present? Conscious of its relevance, roles, and responsibilities to each changing times. How does and will such a repository also recognize the inevitable mixed marriages of cultures and languages on the Singapore theatre stage, where more local plays are written in 2 or more languages? Will the DASTT be able to include Tamil plays that are bi or multilingual? And how this redefines and redraws the parameters of Singapore Tamil theatre? I would argue that the repository or such repositories should have conversations on bilingual and multilingual theatre, as I have for Malay theatre, as increasingly we need to move away from the role of language as preserving identity and instead liberate ethnic language and allow it to struggle with the manifesting of ideas to a contemporary secular audience. Now, the second concern is on the space for diversity and inclusiveness in how the repository accepts, seeks, and makes available the content and materials. Now, in my discussions, both with my Tamil theatre peers, as well as the Malay theatre colleagues, there is a real desire, though admittedly in varying degrees, on a repository that is or will be unbiased, without judgment, where censorship is secondary to a commitment by the repository to defend and protect the inclusion of plays and even playwrights that have been red flagged as problematic. Example, the content and methodologies that are politically sensitive. For example, that there is an articulate and coherent recognition in the value of every contribution and of plugging gaps created by discriminating measures that will create amnesia within the community. Now, besides problematic plays and playwrights, what is or are the places of bilingual or multilingual scripts in the repository where the primary language is not Tamil, but the narrative is rooted in the Indian person's perspective or experience? And what about mediocre and bad plays? Or those that have never been staged or published or both? Will there be a measure of quality by whose measures? Only good ones where many are mediocre? Will the measure be dictated by ticket sales, media reviews, controversies, academic or institutional support, or just visibility? What I have also learned is that there are or may be playwrights and practitioners who have and will refuse to submit their works to such a repository for political factors or concerns such as censorship, for example. Valid, I'm not sure. I think that's to be discussed. So what kind of assurances will there be? So the community will feel safe and will feel included and not neglected. Now, having said all this, yes, the DASTT is a cause for celebration not only for the Tamil community but also for the whole of Singapore theatre, actually. I stress this again. But it is a collective effort to ensure that the DASTT, while committed to the archiving of Tamil theatre, is itself a living space that is open to active and constant conversations and to its own evolution in a constantly changing landscape. Congratulations once again to my friends in the Tamil theatre community. Nandri.